The year is 1223. The location is a mud-choked, godforsaken stretch of the southern Russian steppe. This is not the grand confrontation of empires. This is a reckoning, a brutal demonstration of the new order. Beneath a colossal, rough-hewn wooden platform, placed with methodical, cold precision, a dozen proud Rus princes met their end. Their final, silent agony, illuminated only by the deep orange glow of torchlight, was a terror the world had never witnessed. Above them, Mongol generals Jebe and Subutai, their faces grim but triumphant, raised a ceremonial drinking bowl, completely deaf to the muffled screams. This was the dark banquet of victory. The battle that preceded this horror was one of desperate, hopeless struggle. A single, ferocious Rus heavy cavalryman, Drazina, his horse slain, fought against 3 Mongol cavalrymen. A final, futile gesture to defend a shattered banner. Their heavy, splintered shields were no match for the relentless storm of Mongol horse archers' arrows. The initial chase, the Mongol feigned retreat, had exhausted the naive Kievan Rus heavy cavalry, drawing them far from safety into the steppe's embrace. When the Mongol force suddenly pivoted, the chaos of the impact was absolute. Now, the mud and blood splattered high, a grim masterpiece of strategic annihilation. The broken, ornate helmet of a fallen Rus prince lay crushed in the mire, gazing at an indifferent sky. The Mongol pincer movement was complete, the disciplined cavalry surrounding the desperate remnants. The final, brutal slaughter was observed by the generals with cold, analytical eyes. The terrified, captured princes were dragged toward this final, ominous wooden platform, a dark monument to the end of their era, illuminated by a single, powerful torch in the overwhelming darkness. The storm did not arrive with a flash of lightning, but with a frantic messenger bursting into the opulent, dimly lit court of Prince Mstislav the Bold. The first, confused reports of unknown horsemen from the east were met with startled faces and deep naivete. The ancient, hand-drawn map of Eastern Europe suddenly gained a terrifying new line, a sharp arrow representing the unprecedented advance of the Mongol hordes. But true fear was supplanted by old hubris. In a tense council, the various Kievan Rus princes of Suzdal, Chernigov, and Kiev argued heatedly, their historical distrust eclipsing any unified strategy. While they bickered, General Subutai observed the vast, open, muddy steppes of southern Russia through his spyglass, the endless plains his greatest tactical advantage. The Mongol column, small but incredibly disciplined, marched relentlessly, their supplies compact, their endurance boundless. They watched as the proud, heavily armored Drazina rode out of their forts, their gleaming steel a symbol of power, a power the Mongols instantly understood and sought to exploit. A hidden Mongol scout, nestled in the long grass, silently observed the slow, disorganized movement of the combined Rus forces. General Jebe, at a small, austere camp, studied a captured Rus spear fragment, noting the enemy's strength in heavy armor and, crucially, their crippling lack of mobility. The efficiency of the Mongol supply train, light, fast, and utilizing the resources of the land, contrasted sharply with the Kievan Rus army struggling to pull heavy wagons through the deep, clinging mud, a logistical nightmare of their own making. Despite the logistical failure, Prince Mstislav Mstislavich gave a rousing, but ultimately futile, speech to his eager, naive army, their breath clouding the cold air. The signal for movement was a small grass fire ignited by a Mongol scout, a quick blaze against the horizon, part of a sophisticated communication system. The intricate golden Byzantine cross hanging around the neck of a Rus warrior was a symbol of the civilization they defended, captured with a shallow focus. A fragile focus soon to be shattered. Then, the vast, silent horizon broke. Tiny, dark shapes, the advancing Mongol cavalry, appeared like a swarm, signaling the beginning of the end. The Mongols' lifelong discipline was showcased in every horse archer practicing his skills in a dust-filled cloud. As the unsuspecting Rus forces marched through the tall grass, their bright banners flying, General Subutai watched, his scarred face showing cold, deep concentration as he calculated their predictable moves. The Rus infantry nervously sharpened their weapons, their apprehension growing. Generals Jebe and Subutai gave concise, clear orders, their precise hand gestures underscoring the unity of their command. Even the alliance was fractured. The massive, disorganized column of Palavsian Cuman horsemen rode alongside the Rus, their distrust of vulnerability the Mongols had noted. The first terrifying flight of Mongol arrows rained down upon the Kievan Rus vanguard. The Rus responded with a thunderous, aggressive charge, believing their sheer weight would crush the lighter enemy. But the Mongol cavalryman simply turned his light horse sharply, avoiding the head-on collision by mere inches. The visible panic on a Rus infantryman's face melted into confusion as the Mongols began their strategic, organized retreat, making the Rus believe they were winning the day. Blinded by this false victory, the Rus princes enthusiastically urged their heavy cavalry into the pursuit, driving them miles away from their main lines. The desperate exhaustion of the pursuit force was evident in every grinding step. The signal flare, a sudden bright burst of orange smoke, fired by a Mongol commander, was the final, devastating cue. The trap had been sprung. The retreat ended with brutal suddenness. The Mongol light cavalry, having led the weary, overconfident Kievan Rus Druzina pursuit force across the unforgiving steppe, pivoted on a dime. It was a maneuver of breathtaking, disciplined synchronicity, transforming a disorganized rout into a tightly packed, formidable line of battle. The camera should zoom into the bewildered, horrifying expression of a Rus prince, his face a visceral tableau of tactical realization. The pursuit had been an elaborately sprung trap. Within moments, the full, overwhelming Mongol numbers materialized, pouring over the low hills to instantly envelop the flanks. They had been hidden, patiently waiting for the signal. The first thunderous volley of Mongol horse archers' arrows, a deadly, hissing cloud, slammed into the dense, heavily armored, yet now stationary and utterly exposed Rus formation. The metallic sound of wood on steel echoed like a drumbeat of doom across the vast, lonely plains. A Rus heavy horse, a massive beast of war, collapsed dramatically, its coat instantly transformed into a pincushion, throwing its heavily mailed rider into the churning chaos. The relentless Mongol light cavalry immediately began their classic, tightening circle, a whirlwind of death. They pelted the confused Rus center with a continuous, precise, and psychologically debilitating storm of arrow fire, the legendary Parthian shot, now executed on a terrifying, grand-scale encirclement. A Rus infantryman screamed, a primal sound of agony, as he desperately tried to pull a barbed arrow from his shoulder, the jagged wound instantly rendering his weapon arm useless. Then, the final, decisive blow was delivered with cold professionalism. General Subutai, the mastermind of this magnificent feigned retreat, gave the terse command. The massive body of the heavy Mongol shock cavalry surged forward, their lances lowered in an unstoppable wave, a dark, terrifying tide across the muddy plain. The moment of impact was a horrifying, bone-shattering collision, captured in a chaotic, visceral handheld shot. The heavy lancers slamming into the now broken, exhausted, and arrow-riddled Rus lines. The force was absolute, the disintegration immediate. A Mongol lancer drove his heavy lance through the thick mail of a Rus Druzina warrior. The sheer, kinetic power lifted the man completely from his saddle, a grotesque trophy. The ground, once merely muddy, was now completely churned into a gruesome sludge, stained dark with pooling blood and littered with broken weapons, shattered shields, and fallen men. Even their famed heavy armor could not save them. The elite Kievan Rus princes were no match for the enemy's tactical teamwork and brutal efficiency. In a chilling display of organized capture, a Rus prince, still heavily armored, was yanked violently from his saddle by two disciplined Mongol warriors. His mail and leather straps proved utterly useless against the tightly thrown rope and the treacherous, muddy ground. The sight of their highest nobility being captured alive and struggling in the dirt sent a wave of total demoralization through the remaining army. The will to fight evaporated. The Mongol soldiers, moving with the cold efficiency of a cleanup crew, began to systematically clear the battlefield, swiftly dispatching the wounded Rus who were too broken or too high-ranking to be taken prisoner. It was an act of annihilation, professional and entirely devoid of rage. A close-up shot fixed on a broken Kievan Rus shield, emblazoned with a proud family crest, now pierced by multiple Mongol arrows and lying half-submerged in the mud. A silent, potent symbol of the symbolic decay and destruction of their power. Meanwhile, General Jebe received concise reports from his scouts, his hand sweeping a dismissive gesture toward the scattered Rus remnants, already planning the final mop-up of the few survivors. A small, desperate pocket of Rus infantry formed a tight, feudal shield wall, resisting the overwhelming pressure, their fate sealed by their sheer isolation. A Mongol soldier used a heavy warhammer to smash through the dented helmet of a stubborn Druzina warrior, the impact sickeningly brutal and decisive. The vast, disorganized retreat of the few remaining Rus forces was then mercilessly hunted down, captured in a sprawling, panoramic aerial shot of devastating defeat and flight across the endless steppe. General Subutai, a figure of stoic, immovable assessment, rode slowly through the carnage, his expression impassive as he surveyed the tactical success and the absolute extent of the annihilation. The cold, logistical process began immediately. Mongol soldiers stripped the fallen Rus of their heavy armor and all valuable weaponry. A grim pile of ornate Rus helmets and weaponry, glistening with fresh blood and thick mud, was efficiently gathered for inventory, the undisputed spoils of war. A group of demoralized and utterly defeated Kievan Rus princes were led, bound by rope, toward the center of the growing Mongol encampment, their faces blank with the shock of their fate. Under the curt direction of a non-commissioned officer, the Mongol soldiers then began the disturbing construction of a massive, heavy wooden platform. Its ominous, silent purpose was clear to all who watched. A close-up on the terrified eyes of a captured Rus prince showed his horror as he was forced to watch the heavy planks being laid, one by one. Adjacent to the dark, newly built structure, Generals Jebe and Subutai sat down at a makeshift campaign table, preparing for their victory feast, their faces utterly impassive to the horrific events that were about to unfold. The execution began in a moment of sickening finality. The captured Rus princes were forced down onto the ground, their hands securely tied. The initial heavy footfalls of the Mongol generals and soldiers stepping onto the planks initiated the crushing, the enormous weight pressing down, and the muffled screams beginning from beneath the wood. General Subutai took a deep, deliberate drink from a ceremonial cup, his expression a perfect portrait of satisfied conquest, as the lives of his royal enemies were slowly and methodically crushed out beneath his feet. The sudden, complete silence in the Mongol camp was broken only by the sounds of the ongoing victory feast, the clatter of metal and the low murmur of voices, and the occasional, inaudible, final groan from beneath the platform. A Mongol soldier, his face etched with a grim smile, casually handed a piece of roasted meat to another, displaying a chilling and complete indifference to the execution happening mere inches below them. A terrifying display of normalized ultimate violence. The final shot is a slow pan as the sun rises over the vast, empty steppe the next day. The wooden platform stands alone and ominous in the center of the now dispersing camp. A single Mongol horseman surveys the utterly destroyed battlefield, the silence heavy and absolute, the new order established in blood and dust. The tactical flip was sudden, violent, and complete. As the Mongol cavalry broke their feigned retreat, General Subutai raised his saber, signaling the counterattack into the disorganized, exhausted Rus pursuit. A Druzina officer, his helmet lost, desperately attempted to turn his heavy horse, his face a mix of exhaustion and terror, only to be overwhelmed by the concentrated volleys of Mongol horse archers' arrows, turning the pursuit into an instant, chaotic rout. The ground was instantly littered with falling men and horses. The supply wagons were quickly overrun, looted, and burned by fast-moving Mongol light cavalry. General Jebe gave the crisp, non-negotiable order to capture all high-ranking Rus princes alive for interrogation and execution, a tactical priority. Two Mongol warriors wrestled a struggling, heavily armored Rus prince off his horse and into the deep mud, his terrified, mud-caked hands being tightly bound. The captured princes were led on a forced march to the camp center. The Mongol soldiers, in the torchlit night, hammered the thick planks of the execution platform into place with grim efficiency. The Mongol generals raised a final toast from the top of the platform, the feast taking place directly over the slowly crushing Rus princes, the ultimate expression of absolute dominance and psychological warfare. The sun set over the vast, open steppe, the carnage complete. A Mongol scribe diligently wrote the detailed battle report, recording the tactical success of the feigned retreat and the crushing of the Rus leadership. The final shot is a long, slow zoom out from the now empty battlefield, revealing the vast expanse of the newly mapped, newly vulnerable Kievan Rus lands, now an open, silent gate for the future Mongol Empire invasion under Batu Khan. The reckoning was complete, and the bloody legacy was yet to come.